together we are stronger than we could ever be apart. No matter who or what you call yourself or where you come from, yeah, there is a place in this world with open arms right now. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. Breathe in and out, slowly feel all that's around you, all that you feel, all that you know. Let it go. Welcome to love, welcome to peace, welcome to our community. Be who you are, let your light shine. We're so much more when we unite. Yeah, when we unite. Oh, we unite. Yeah, yeah, when we unite. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You are welcome here. Love is welcome here. Peace is welcome here. You are welcome here.
Good afternoon and welcome. I am Reverend Cindy Grimes from Center for Spiritual Living Ocala, and I am so happy that you have chosen to spend a little time with us this afternoon. And we have a great broadcast, a great conversation lined up for you. I think it's going to be very enlightening for you. It certainly is always an enlightening conversation for me. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Just to tell you a little bit about who we are. At Center for Spiritual Living Ocala, we are one community of many centers for spiritual living that are located all over the United States and the rest of the world. And everyone is an independent center unto themselves. And so these are the things that we value at Center for Spiritual Living Ocala. Number one, at the top of our list is spiritual growth and practice. It is the reason that we exist as a community, to come together, to learn from one another, and to grow together. And we value love. It is also at the very top of our list, along with appreciation. And there is that word community again. We value freedom and creativity, as well as health and wholeness, generosity, and financial well-being. And this is our vision at Center for Spiritual Living Ocala. We are a model center for spiritual living, as evidenced by the transformational impact we have on our spiritual community, the Centers for Spiritual Living organization, and the community in which we reside in Ocala, Marion County, Florida. And what that means is that we know that we're doing our job if lives are changing. That means my life has changed, and it is continually in change, in flux, but in a good way, in a conscious way, in a beautiful way. And so we know that we're doing what we came here to do if lives are changing. And that means that you, as a part of our community, or even as a viewer, walk away from here feeling better and like you have something that is going to help you as you go through this path and journey of life. Our mission is to empower individuals to awaken to the power and presence that lies within and all around them so they may live their best lives. And that's one of the things that distinguishes us as Centers for Spiritual Living. The fact that we believe and we teach and we live from this idea that we are all part of this infinite thing that it really has no name, but that may go by the name of God, universe, creator, or any number of other things. We are all part of that essence, and we are all expressions of it. And so that is what we're about at CSL Ocala. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we are doing. Since the beginning of this year, and in our online platform, we have been talking from a book and a program called See No Stranger, The Revolutionary Love Project by Valerie Kaur. And it is about that revolutionary kind of love, loving ourselves, loving so-called others, and loving even our opponents. We don't use the word enemy, but the word opponent. And so let me show you what this is about here. Revolutionary love. What is it? A form of sweet labor. Fierce, bloody, imperfect, life-giving, a choice that we make over and over again. This kind of love can be taught, it can be modeled, and it can be practiced. Revolutionary love is the choice to enter into labor for others, for our opponents, and for ourselves in order to transform the world around us. Yeah, it's big, and it's beautiful. And this is the message that has been preached by every spiritual guru, or teacher that we have known. This is the kind of love we're talking about it, and how we do it in a real practical way. And so this month in particular, or this quarter, we've been talking about loving our opponents and what that looks like, meaning giving ourselves the space to rage and to know, to take care of ourselves before we reach out to others, to really be strong within ourselves. And doing that gives us the capacity to listen to people who may be on the other side of the aisle, or with whom we may disagree. And the last part of this is what we're talking about in the month of August, which is the idea of reimagining what the future could be. In other words, visioning. And that is a huge part of what we do at Centers for Spiritual Living, this idea of visioning, and we're going to spend the whole month talking about it. And so I have invited a couple of friends who are amazing practitioners of this practice of visioning. And I'm going to invite Reverend Rodney Giddens from the One Love Center in Brooklyn, New York, to join us. Hello, Rodney. Oh, Rodney, we can't hear you. There's no voice. There you go. Try again. No. Cannot hear you. Oh, my goodness. We had a few tech issues before we came on the broadcast. And let's see, maybe give it a try, Rodney. Maybe you've got to press a button or something. Nope. Oh, my goodness. I guess it is not going to work. I see he's still trying. There you are.
What about now?
I hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yes, I hear you now. It's a little messy, but there. Can you hear?
I can hear you.
Fabulous. And I can hear you. Yay. I hear a lot of other stuff too, though.
It's a little scratchy.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know where your mic is. It's
I'll
a
try
strange.
one thing real quickly.
Go ahead, Rodney. Let's hear one more time. Nope. Well, I'm not one to give up easily. I see Rodney's not either. I don't know if he can hear me or not.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I hear you. There's still some weird noise under.
Yeah, it's a little scratchy noise.
Yeah, it's a really strange sound. It sounds like somebody's crunching something or
Yeah.
slurping. I don't know what it is, but that is not going to
Well,
work.
I will be back.
Okay, Rodney, check on out, and
Be back.
we'll bring you. We'll try and
Okay.
bring you back in a little bit. Well, good thing we can go with the flow. So I am going to do our invocation, and we're just going to hit a little reset button right here. That's, this is the best time for prayer. You need that break, and we're going to set new intention and just move on forward. So I invite you to just take a deep breath in and just allow that breath to flow down into your body, just relieving and releasing any tension that may be there. Let any tension go down from your face and your head, your neck, flow down your shoulders and arms, down into the ground. Take another breath in and let that tension flow from your body down and out, just anchoring you in a space of peace, calm, and quiet. And so, from this space of clarity, this space of power and peace and joy, I just claim a possibility for this day, for our time together. I give thanks for everyone that is tuning into this moment, knowing that the right and perfect people are here at the right and perfect time. I just pray and affirm that everything that needs to be said is said, and everything that needs to be heard is heard, and that it is spirit speaking to spirit in this moment, our highest selves speaking and connecting with our highest self. I give thanks for this time that we spend together, knowing that it is inspired, that it is enlightening, and that it is yet another one of those tools that people can put in their spiritual knapsack as they travel this path of life. And that it makes that path and that journey easier and more enjoyable. And so I give thanks once again for this time together, knowing that the right and perfect people show up, that our technology works, and that it is a benefit to all that we are here. And so I release these words with joy and with gratitude, knowing that it is already done. And so it is. All right. Well, we don't know if Reverend Rodney's going to be able to join us again, but I do have my dear, wonderful friend and practitioner, Norma Anderson Davis. Let's take you off this. You're muted here. So we're going to unmute you. Hey, Norma.
Hi, Rev Cindy. How are you?
I am great. How are you doing?
Good. I'm good. How's my sound?
Your sound is great. Your sound is very good. And you are in Atlanta.
I am
You
in
and Donna?
Atlanta. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful town. Beautiful state. It's lovely
Awesome.
here.
Awesome. So another traveling nursing gig. Just for
Yes.
our folks
Yes.
who
It's one of
know.
the better ones. It's been very enjoyable. Donna's not hating to go in every night.
Right. It's, I can only imagine. It's got to be rough out there, treating people with COVID and with all the other drama and stuff that's happening all around this. I'm just
And being short staffed on top of all of that. Yeah.
yeah. So, as always, kudos to you and Donna for the service that you're providing and the love that you're sharing with folks as they go through it, as they are
Thank
going
you.
through it. Yeah, love you. I'm looking here. Let me see if there's any messages here. Wow, there's folks joining us from all over the place. So I see some new faces or some new names here. It's just wonderful to have all you folks join us. So, I don't know if Rodney's going to join us, but we might as well go ahead and dive into the conversation, Norma.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. And you and Donna in particular, I know you use visioning in your lives. And
Oh my God, yes.
Yes, and with amazing, amazing results. So many stories. So I don't know
So
which
many.
way this conversation is going to be led, but I'm super excited about it. So I want to preface it by talking a little bit about this idea of visioning and how visioning is different than visualizing. But actually, we're going to have a little bit different perspective on this today, and then we're going to go into really the meat of visioning in our next session. Um, but visioning is that, like where we take conscious power and we're conscious about the direction that we want to go in, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's about stepping out of victimhood and really claiming who we are as creative spiritual beings. And so with the plan for today's conversation was really to talk about how we move through that victimhood, into being a conscious creator, because there's stages, and it takes time, although it can happen in an instant. For most of us, it's an unfolding that happens, I
The
think.
process.
Yeah, it's a process. And so I don't know how many of our viewers are familiar with Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith, but he's written a book on visioning, and he talked about the stages of conscious development, right? So we start out, so many of us, feeling like we're victims of life, right? Like life is happening to us. So that's like the beginning point of where most of us are. And then we find things like law of attraction and stuff like that starts to talk about, oh, wow, you mean I can like choose where I want to go? I can choose the experience I want to have. I can speak it, I can claim it, and it could happen. Right. And you start playing
Yes.
around with parking spaces and, you know, traffic lights and stuff like that. And so that is life by me, right? Like you are imposing your will kind of on life. And then there's the next level of it where we see or feel ourselves as the channel, like life is happening through me, right? I'm going to allow this spirit, love, God, creator, whatever you want to call it, to do its work through me. And then the last step, or the last phase, and there's probably many in between, but this is just what Dr. Beckwith has identified, is life happening as me. Like when you make that big leap into that knowing of, wow, spirit moves in, through, and as me. In other words, I am God in expression. I'm not a channel of it. I am it.
You're it.
Yeah. And so that's the big leap. And most of us don't go from victim to like, wow, I'm showing up as God. Right?
Well, I think, yeah, and for sure, it definitely starts with the realization. We have to figure out what it is that we even are ourselves, who it is we are.
Mhm.
Realization, self-actualization, all of that kind of stuff. Because if you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want.
Right. And, and it takes somebody, even just for me, let me put it that way, for myself, somebody had to speak that truth, because that was not anything that I grew up with. Right. In fact, the idea of showing up as God, like to say that I am part of that, felt
Blasphemous.
yes, blasphemy, heresy. Like even saying the words, man, I might get hit by a bolt of thunder or lightning, rather, to claim something like that. So that's deep. And I remember the moment that I heard that. I heard that from a pulpit in a Unity church, and it was mind blowing, because Christian churches teach that, right? Where, God is everywhere, but somehow God can be out there and not here. Like, I don't
Right.
even know how, that doesn't make any sense. So, anyway, what was, and hi, Rodney. So nice to see you.
Good to be seen. Good to see you
Good,
all.
good. Awesome. I don't know how much you were able to hear of the setup of the conversation, but was just talking with Norma about Michael Beckwith's stages of spiritual, development of consciousness. So, yay, Reverend Rod is back.
Yeah.
Oh, there's that weird sound. So maybe we mute you unless you're answering a question. But so the first question, or the first thing I want to talk about is if you could share a personal experience for people, maybe they will be able to see themselves in your experience of where you moved from being a victim or feeling like you were a victim of life to finally owning your power to change, and how you did that. Like what was going on in your world at that time?
Well, for me, I know it was a very young age. I was about 12 years old and my mom died. And my entire everything, my life, my world as I knew it, just came crashing down. And then I kind of got shuffled from family member to family member, and I had no real control. No one ever asked me where I wanted to be or who I wanted to live with. They just chose for me that what they thought was best for me. And I think for me, that kind of limited my idea of self as to where I belong, for one, and my idea to speak up when needed to. And that's something that I had been struggling with from that time. And, going through these classes and things that I've been learning ever since, actually, before I actually entered CSL, I learned to gain some power through. I think that's why I become such a workaholic, because I figured if I had the money to take care of myself, to do things that I wanted to do, to be who I wanted to be, then I could choose these things for myself. Where I still struggle though is in environments I walk in and I wait to be invited into situations and the conversations instead of just joining in like I'm supposed to be there.
Mm,
So, it's a work in progress. I think I'm a lot better now than I was 20 years ago, but and still conscious effort every time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You hit on something, Norma, and Ronnie disappeared again. Darn it. Anyway, um, the idea of how our childhood can set us up with these expectations of what life is like. So you lose your mom at an early age, you could see where that sets somebody up for a victim kind of mindset, right? Like life happened to
Definitely.
me, right? You didn't have any say about any of that.
Right.
You could have stayed in that victim mode forever. Some people never come out of it.
Yeah. And for me, that kind of sparks things in me too when people are going through that process themselves, and I have to keep myself out of judgment because everybody handles things differently and processes things differently. And I was 12 and I see people 30 going through the same thing, and it's just like overtaking their entire life. And I have to catch myself in judgment in that because people process things differently.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have that experience. I was blessed, and my parents are still both living. But there were other things in my childhood that had me feel very much like a victim. Things I had no control over. Um, to the point where I can remember being a teenager and going out, like, to a party with friends, and I wouldn't let myself get too excited, get too happy, have too much fun, because when I came home, the crash would be too big. Does
Mm.
that make sense? Like I couldn't let myself get too happy because I was always waiting for, what's that expression, for the other shoe to drop,
I'll let you drop.
right? Like, oh, it's only going to last so long. And I know some shit's going to happen and take me down? And so I wouldn't let myself get too excited. Right. So anyway, I think that happens to a lot of people, like that's the setup. It becomes your hard wiring. It's like the cement is still wet, right, when you're a kid, and you start to believe like this is just how it is.
But sometimes when these things happen, you don't even realize that the programming is being set. It could be years later when you're actually doing that kind of the self realization or whatever, when you're looking back on yourself and how things have manifested and changed and formed your life. That's when the aha moments happen, and you're like, oh my God, I
Yeah.
didn't realize, this was the reason why I do these things now. And and it is a process.
Yes. Yeah, for sure, for sure. You see, there was another. So you also mentioned about the center being part of that journey for you?
A large part.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speak on. Tell us a little more about
Mm. Well, I didn't find the center. Donna did. And I'm skeptical of everything new. I've always been a watcher, I guess. So
that.
I came to this place and I'd sit back and I'd watch these people, and they were saying all these wonderful things. But you go a lot of places and people say wonderful things, but then they'll turn around and do something totally opposite.
Yeah.
So again, that other shoe that you were speaking of. So I'd watch them, I'd come a few weeks and listen to them talk and then get to know them. And people were actually walking the talk. They were doing what they said, and they all looked young. These people are like 89 years old and looking 60. So I'm
Hmm.
like, I need some of this Kool-Aid they're drinking. But, as I got to become involved in the center, and, I always was a really gruff, fun loving, but gruff. I don't cut any edges. I say what's on my mind, which I still kind of do.
Hmm.
But going through all the, classes, listening to Reverend Peggy and you speak, you learn things. For first, you learn how to manage yourself, which was huge for me. Um, I learned how to not be so hard on myself, for one thing,
Hmm.
and realize that I am bigger than I always thought I was.
Hmm.
So it kind of it empowered me. It gave me control more. Instead of just going through life, I actually learned to not just manage, but manifest my life.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. I think I have boiled it, the essence of it down to the three P's. The three P's. Your principles, right? So you walk into the center, and myself too, like all these new ideas, all these like, wow, what do you mean? Like I thought the way I grew up was the way it was, right? Then to come into the center and find this whole new way of thinking and relating to the world and people and what's my place in it. Like, the principles, that was number one. Number two is the practices, right? Then we get introduced to these ideas of meditation and things that bring you into self-awareness, right? What's really going on in my head? What are the
Hmm.
thoughts that I'm holding up here? What's going on in my body? What's the connection between all of that, and really starting to like pay attention to where I am.
Hmm.
Self-reflection, right? So what did I say? Principles, practices, and then it's the people. It's the people, the
Yes.
community that you surround yourself with that can pick you up when you're down, that give you a place to shine and to be yourself, and just so much. So that's what it is to me. It's principles, practices, and the people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where I guess my light really was brought out. I like when we go into, like I mentioned at the beginning, when I go into a new space and I would kind of just not express until I was invited. It To help myself get out of that when I'm at the center, I'm always the first one. When someone new walks in the door, I'm the first one in their face. Hello, how are you? How'd you find us? It's so good to see you. What is that? And that helped me. It was making them feel welcome, but it helped me, I think, get out of myself. To be that bigger person that I know that I've realized that I am. So,
Mm.
like you said, the tools, the spiritual tool belt, it comes in a lot of different forms. And some of them, though, we don't even consider to be tools, but they are also in that arsenal.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you. I think I see Reverend Rodney. Let's see. Maybe we'll try and bring him back in. There you go. Hey, Rodney.
All right. Hey, can you hear
Oh,
me?
yes. Yes, I can hear you.
I can hear you too. How wonderful. I've
Yay.
been able to catch some of the broadcasts, and I have to tell you, first and foremost, my introduction to religious science, science of mind, was really through Reverend Michael and visioning. And so this was the very first thing that I had really heard about religious science. Uh, I'm going to quickly fast forward to this current thing that's happening now. because I felt like a victim of technology. And I went through these stages of feeling victimized, and then wait a minute, I know a little bit of something. I think that okay, there is some power that I can use that's going to help me get through this situation. And then as I advance in believing it, I'm like, okay, I heard you say, you're not going to give up, and I'm like, I'm not going to give up, and we can make it happen. And so like, okay, yeah, we're going through these stages, and then I realized that I'm just going to have to get still. And I got still, and I really feel like I'm connecting with that power greater than me. However, that I am one, not just with this power, but as this power. And it guided me to a parking spot where I can hear clearly now, and I can see, and I can be heard. And I can think of so many instances in my life where I might have stayed in the victim mode for a longer period of time, and only because it was so familiar. It was very familiar to, like, oh, look what the pity party, and look what they are doing to me, and I really was kind of thinking that suffering was just had to be part of the human experience, and in a way it is. However, when we move in consciousness, realizing that suffering is not the way of spirit, and so I think particular in when I was making a big change in my life, I was living as a victim. I was practicing victimhood. It was very convenient to blame other people for my predicament. I was using substances outside of myself that were controlling me and thinking that I was in control, but that was always a lie. And then realizing that some change had to happen when life got intolerable. It was either or, change or die. The opportunity for change came, and I was able to start to see that I had a role in my change. I didn't just have to be a victim. And moving through the stages, I was able to get a little greater awareness of who I am and my role in my life. And that is not up to anybody else to make a decision on how my life is to be lived. I think the greatest, in going on the spiritual path of being a practitioner and a minister, is where I really started feeling the oneness, feeling God as me on a deeper level, and seeing the change happen and experiencing it. Because from what I believe with Reverend Michael, he did say that there are times when we go up and down through these stages.
You're right. I don't know what the sound is like for other people, and so much of what you're saying is so beautiful. I hope they're hearing it all, because I'm having a hard time, but I know what you're saying. And I'm actually going to mute you for a second because there's that sound. But you said so many good things. But your example right now just shows how, it's not a continual thing, and it's not static. Like you arrive and you're there and you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? Like the whole victim thing can come on you in a second, right? The tech isn't working. Oh man. And you can fall right back into it so fast. And I think that's just part of the human condition. But what's different now for me, and probably I think you would say the same thing, Rodney, myself in this moment versus myself 15, 20 years ago, is that I would have stayed in the victim mode. Oh, poor me. Why does this stuff happen to me all the time? And you fall back into it. But now I know I got that bag of tools. Now I know, because I've had practice, I can come back to the truth faster, quicker, easier, and pull myself out of that place. Like you did in a matter of minutes, Rodney, instead of it taking whatever amount of time it would have taken you before. For me, it could be hours, days, months, years, even for some things, of feeling like a victim.
Now, I just want to make a caveat. You guys are ministers. I'm a practitioner, and we make it sound like it was through these classes that we took for these, becoming minister, becoming process. Yes, those help. Those help to enhance what we, have already learned prior to getting to this point. But everybody can do these things, develop these tools without being a practitioner or a minister. It's something that we can use in our everyday lives as regular lay people. It's not a higher state of consciousness that nobody can attain. You do have to do the work. I'm not saying it just comes to you with a but it is attainable on our regular, average, everyday, daily practice.
Absolutely. And Norma, that's part of what I love about this format that we're doing, instead of the format that, the usual format of the minister stands in front of the room and talks at the folks in the room, right? I want this to be a conversation always, our spiritual community, so that people have an immersive experience of it. It's not me or somebody else standing up in front of a room pouring out information. No, it's like, I'm on the path myself. Mm-hmm. I fall in and out of victimhood and, being at the top of my game and all of that, just like everybody else. And all I'm doing is sharing tools that have worked for me, and speaking with friends who might have some other tools or some other perspectives that can help me come out of my thing. So it's, we're in it together. We're in circle. There's no hierarchy.
Because some of the most profound things that I hear that people tell me or whatever when I'm going through my story comes from people who aren't licensed in anything. It's just life and their own private practice and things that have worked for them. So, the arsenal, the tool, the friendship, the community is huge. And, when we hold each other up, it's a wonderful thing. It's just amazing.
Yes. I love that. I have to share the story. I don't know. I know some of the names online, but there's some people who've never heard this story of you and I, Norma. So practitioner is like a lay minister, if you want to call it that. We offer classes in Centers for Spiritual Living for people at all levels of their spiritual development. And so practitioner is that bridge, let's say, between being a lay person and being a minister in our movement. So trying to convince Norma to become a practitioner. And she's like, no, I can't do that. And, we need all kinds of people to be practitioners. So anyway, I guess I wasn't a minister yet at this point.
No, you were going through a ministerial school.
Anyway, I was going through something, and you know how people ruminate. So I'm going through this thing in my head over and over and over again in my quiet time or whatever. And I'm meditating on it and I'm praying on it like, God, give me the answer. What is going on here? And so in my quiet meditation, the face of God shows up for me. Only that face is the other face you're looking at that screen at Norma. And what God, as Norma, told me, if you shut the up, you might hear what I have to say. And I love that so much because it is exactly what I needed to hear. It was in a way that I could hear it. It was everything. It was everything. And it was the face of God in this woman sitting right there, Norma, because Norma will tell you like it is. Norma will tell you when you're acting the fool. Norma will just speak her mind, but she speaks it with sincerity and with love. And so you're my practitioner.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I could help some people, Some people probably don't relate to me, but that's why there's more than one practitioner around,
There's all kinds. And we all have our gifts to share. We all have our gifts. Let me see if there's anything else. Amen to Norma. Yes, amen to Norma. I think the other big thing I wanted to talk about, and we already kind of have, is how that move through these phases and stages of consciousness isn't linear.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, you can go, especially once you have some of the practices, you can go from victim to that you can jump. It can happen. But anyway, tell me about your journey with that, Norma, and do you slip back, and what do you do to pull yourself out, and how, how that works for you?
Well, my go-to anytime I'm in any type of victimization situation, I find myself in judgment, pointing fingers, trying to find others that could be the blame for my current situation. Um, I've never been a wallower. I've always been one to make it not be my fault. So for me, again, work in progress, particularly practitioner means practice, work on your practice. Um, so hmm, I find myself having to stop, breathe, take a moment, even do a quick meditation a lot of times because I tend to want to jump to judging things, people, situation, and myself. And just doing that quick introspection, whatever the word is, introspection of the situation and how what my role is in that at the moment helps me to get past my old programming and form a different thought. But kind of like when you would say between every I forget how you word it, between every there's a pause, a moment,
Yeah.
stimulus and response. There's a pause. And I take that pause. That was a great lesson for me when you gave that. To take that pause, stop, think, feel before just because I used to always be a blurt out, whatever comes in here comes out here. And it sometimes wasn't always so kind. So now with the new training, it comes in here and still comes out here, but it usually has some processing that happens before it comes out now.
Right.
So
That is a great little tool right there, right? To take that time
yes,
in the moment
yes,
to pause, breathe. That's a great one. The other one you mentioned that I love is that the mirror effect, right?
oh yes,
Right. So what we see out there is not necessarily just something out there, but more a reflection of who we are, right?
definitely.
In some form or fashion. And that's
With
another wonderful self reflection tool, right?
exactly, because a lot of it is about me. It's
Hmm.
not the person out there or what they're doing, what they're feeling, what they're going through. It's normally about me and whatever happened, what buttons it pushed of mine. Those pre-installed buttons, and then my reaction to said stimuli.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And it looks like Rod is back. Reverend Rodney, let's bring him back in because we're going to be wrapping it up here. Yo, Rev, you made
I'm
it back.
back. Big time.
Awesome, awesome. Well, the last question, if you, just kind of, I think you just gave us an example of it, really. But, when that idea that spiritual journey isn't linear and how easy it is to fall back, you know, and how we can move ourselves through. Even, and the fact that we find ourselves in victim mode,
Hmm.
it happens, right?
Yep.
So acknowledge it, get over it. And the faster you can get over it, let it go, the better off you are.
Hmm.
So anyway, I just want to, you have any closing words, Rodney, before we have to wrap things up here?
Well, I think a lot of the stages of spiritual growth has to do with what I know I heard Reverend Michael say, which helped me out so much in the beginning about is our response to things in life rather than our reaction. And so usually a response means we're actually taking in a breath, you know, instead of holding the breath. Like when you're anticipating the negative and we just kind of hold our breath and constrict our breathing and our blood flow. And when we are in response to things, we're allowing for a flow. And that way we can better deal with the situations. And I truly believe move from one stage to the next. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't. I kind of get the feeling if we were always in the fourth stage, we just wouldn't need to be here anymore. Uh, like, yeah, okay, I get it. I graduated. what's next? However, in this human uh, form, that it's just part of our life experience to practice to get to practice it, not just for ourselves but for others. um,
Mm,
it's like we get. I mean, I'd like to think I know people who practice perfectly, which doesn't mean that they get it right every time. I certainly can say that about myself. I practice a lot of things wrong.
mm,
However, my response to how I treat myself, the compassion and forgiveness, allows me to not stay in a victim mode when I forgive myself. Allows me to trust in a greater power than thinking that I'm just a conduit, that power just flows through me.
right.
And then as I get a greater realization, then um, life is much more enjoyable. It's much more pleasant. And so I think that's the thing, for us to allow ourselves to have the presence of mind and imagination to to move from where we are, regardless of what stage we are. And just, I mean, Reverend Michael said that there there could be unlimited stages, which is like mind-boggling. Like, gee, I'm glad we're only working with four.
Right.
And that's the place we all want to be. Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. So I think I want to just some really awesome nuggets that you all shared today for people who may be finding themselves in this moment in a victim mode. I just got over COVID, and my victim mode lasted a pretty good while, more than I expected, than I anticipated. It was dark. It was yuck. It was nasty. It was really. I haven't been in such a dark space in a long time, but we use our practices to pull ourselves out. So there may be people that are in a dark space right now, and from what you all have said, the first thing I think is the idea of presence, right? Of being in the moment, of taking the breath, right? Between stimulus and response, taking that space and not coming from a reaction, but actually taking the time to reflect so we can respond. That was one thing I got from you all. And then the next thing is the idea of self reflection and using the things that happen to us, seem like they're happening to us, as a mirror for how we're showing up and what are we putting out in the world, that this is what is being reflected back. And then the last thing that I got, there might have been more, was this idea of being compassionate and forgiving of ourselves when we fall short of whatever thing it is that we thought we were supposed to be or do or whatever. When we fall short of being that expression of God, that we want to be, and we feel ourselves slip back, that the first thing to do is to get into compassion and forgive ourselves. Anything else?
I think that's a good summary of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
It worked for me.
Yes, it does.
It worked for me. So let's see if we've got any comments from folks to address. And I should have asked you all to send us your questions or thoughts in here so we could address them. Yeah. Okay. Good. So just one more call if there's anybody else out there. Awesome talk today. Yes, and now it is. Okay. Yeah. Hate being in victim mode. Done it for too long. Learning not to. Yeah. So now you can pat yourself on the back. Anybody who's felt themselves, seen themselves in victim mode, even just the fact that you recognize it is part of that move out of victimhood. Right. I think.
Yes, yes.
Right.
And there's always preparation for the next stage. That's the thing. Um, the little advances that we make are not so little, and it's like when you take a step, walking on the street. it's like it's moving us in the direction that we want to go, even if we're not exactly sure where we're going. We're still moving
Hmm.
and moving forward, and we have to give ourselves credit for taking the step and getting from where we were to the
Yeah.
next step.
What is the saying? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
One
Yeah.
step.
That's right. That's right. Awesome. Thank you so much, you all. We will be continuing our conversation with anybody from the community that wants to join us on Zoom. And I believe that information is in the chat. If you want to check it out there, let's see. Yes, it is in the chat. So join us for Zoom. It's an informal conversation. It's not recorded or anything. So it's just for the folks that are on the call. Are you two going to be on the call?
I'm
I
gonna do
will,
my
yes.
best.
Yeah,
Yes.
I hear you, Rodney. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day and for sharing about your own journey. I'm sure it touched people. I hope they were able to hear you, Rodney. Norma is always the face of God for me. I love you both.
Love you
Love
too,
you
Rev.
both.
Thank you. Yes, we'll pick this up next week.
All right.
Y'all have
Awesome.
a great afternoon. See you on Zoom.
Yes.
All
Okay.
right.
Peace.
Love
Peace
you.
and blessings,
Peace.
everyone.
Peace. Peace out. All right. What fun. What fun. I love those people. I love my friends. I am blessed, truly blessed with a beautiful spiritual community. So it's time for us to share our offerings. And is this sharing our gifts and tithes? Yes. So Center for Spiritual Living Ocala actually has a physical location. Though we're just meeting online for now, we do have a building where we look forward to gathering just as soon as this COVID spike starts to drop down a little bit. But I invite you and frankly request your support, your financial support of the center. You know, we've got electric bills and trees to take down and all kinds of things here, just like any other establishment. And I invite you, whether you give to the Center for Spiritual Living Ocala or you give someplace else, that your giving actually is what starts the flow, right? So if you want to have friends, you give friendship. If you want love from people, give love. If you want financial security and abundance, you give money. So this is how, this is one of those spiritual tools and one of those ideas. So I invite you to give where you are spiritually fed. I hope that is CSL Ocala, but if it's not, give somewhere, and that keeps you in the flow of giving and receiving and in that flow of life. And so you can give to CSL Ocala in a couple of ways. You can go to our website at cslocala.org/donate, or you can text to tithe, and that's if you have a smartphone, you text to the number that's going across the bottom of the screen, the amount of money that you would like to give to CSL Ocala. And once you set it up, it goes from your account to our account. It's super easy and fast. And that number is 352-5110. And this is our affirmation. I invite you to make it yours. It is the nature of life to give of itself. As it is the tree's nature to bear fruit and the flower's nature to bloom, it is my nature to share the gifts of my time, talent, and treasure. I participate in the divine flow of life, giving generously and receiving abundantly. I am blessed and I am a blessing. I am grateful. And gosh, that sure is the truth. I am blessed and I am very, very grateful for that. One more announcement. I think there is still time for people to register for the Big Sky Retreat that is happening in Big Sky, Montana, September 4th through the 9th. We've got a great lineup of speakers and an amazing music team. And I will be speaking. It will be my first, I think it's my first big outing in person at an event, and so I'm very excited. The theme for Big Sky this year is illumination, and I am going to be speaking about shedding new light on conflict and confrontation. So it's going to be an interesting thing. So let's see if there's anything else here to address before we go. Any other comments? Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see some of these names. James Davis, oh my goodness. And I saw Nate Mandelbaum and Susan Hammond. Oh, it's just wonderful. Lita, so great to see you all. I'm so glad that you could join us. And please do join us on Zoom. And if you can't do that, stop in with us next week where we will have our next installation talking about reimagining and revisioning our lives. And I will close this out with a prayer for protection, which comes from our friends in Unity and James Dillett Freeman. It goes this way. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And I just affirm that all of your seeming obstacles and challenges or crisis or whatever you may be going through turn into stepping stones for your greater yet to be. Have a fabulous week. I look forward to seeing some of you on Zoom, and I hope the rest of you will join us next week. Love and blessings.